Hi and welcome back to Null0 Labs. I know I said we were going to do some routing in this video, but not the case. We're going to continue our journey on firewalls. This time, this puppy. This thing here, this horrible black box, a Cisco ASA 5516. We won't be using the firepower services on it, but we will be deploying it in Germany, and hopefully at some point I will use my DJI Osmo Pocket and we will go along for that journey, and we will see it in its final resting place in Germany for its use case. We're going to use this to take the place of two older Cisco ASAs. Obviously in the real world sometimes we can't always have what we want and have to replace everything with brand new shiny kit. So we're reusing this one to replace the job of two firewalls that are sitting there that are now end of life. This device does not go end of life until August 2026. So it gives us another year before we have to worry about fully replacing it. And hopefully by that time, they'll be replaced with a pair of Palo Altos. So we're going to use this, and we're going to need one of these, our magical blue Cisco console cable. I've already updated this device to the latest firmware and the latest ROMMON. We're going to jump to a video quickly of me doing that because I forgot to record it on this device. So I did it on a smaller device, a 5506, I think it is, 08, a 5508. So we've done, no, 5506, correct one. So we've done the flashing on that one, and I'll jump straight to the video of me doing that, where we upgrade the ROMMON, the system image, and the ASDM to the latest available versions. And then I'm going to I'm going to plug this into the console. We're going to fire it up, and we are going to configure the basic network interfaces for their use case. What we're going to do is we're going to configure two outside interfaces that will be going to two different MPLS networks, and two internal interfaces that will be going to two different parts of the internal network for routing. So we're going to configure those interfaces, configure the basic configuration, get the ASDM up and running and accessible, set the username and password, and we are going to configure the management interface to pick up via DHCP. And then I'm going to hand this off to Uday, who is then going to sit there and go through the current firewalls and put the security rules and policies on here. So at the moment, the firepower services have been uninstalled and turned off because we are not using them in any way. So they're not licensed. So we've turned them off so that it reduces the threat attack surface, because if you leave that running, it is running in the background and it's normally accessible via the management port. So normally you'd have the internal interface and the management interface connected to the same network. You'd assign an IP address for the firepower services on the same network as the management. And then the ASDM passes off traffic to, or for management of that would be done via the management interface. And then internally, when you set up your policies, the policies can then hand off inspection to the firepower services processor to do the inspection of the layer 7 traffic. Obviously, like I said, as we're not using that, we're using this as a standard ASA. So I've disabled that feature. So let's get this plugged in and fired up, and we'll take it from there. Right, welcome back. Right, so what we have here is the process I went through on the secondary ASA. So I have my console cable plugged in on one screen, and on the other terminal session, I have a TFTP server running, and it has in there the latest ASDM version, it has the latest ROMMON version, and the latest Cisco ASA software. You can see here. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer these files over via TFTP to the firewall. I keep wanting to call it a router. There I've misplaced my slash. I need to add another slash after colon. So you do copy TFTP from my laptop I'm going to copy the latest firmware file to disk 0, and it's going to copy it across. Now this will take a little while whilst it sends this file across. It's rather large, so it's going to copy the file from my laptop to the local flash of the Cisco ASA. When that is done, we will be back and we will copy the latest ASDM file over. You can see it's now validating that the file that we are copying over, that we copied over, is correct, and it's writing it to the disk, which is done. We're now going to copy our next file, which will be the latest ASDM. So we're going to copy that file name. We'll jump back onto the ASA. We will replace the file we want to copy from the TFTP, which will be the ASDM, and we will copy that to our disk 0. Again, very similar command, and we will now transfer that file to the ASA. There we go. We can see it is now writing that file to the disk. It's a good thing I remembered to record this when I did it. See, so this one is recorded. So now if we do a dir of the local ASA, we can see we've got our new firmware and our new ASDM. So what we're going to do now is we're going to configure those to be our system boot image and our ASDM. And there we go. It was a 5506. Just saw it go past. Haha. So I was just checking there if there was any additional boot configuration, because sometimes you can enter it twice. So if you entered in whichever boot firmware you put in place, if there was 2 there, it would boot the first one before it reaches the second one. So you want to make sure you've only got one boot command there. So now we're going to reboot the device after we've set the ASDM image. So we will end up with the system booting up to the latest firmware and the latest ASDM. We can now see here it's booting up. Our current ROMMON version is 1.1.01, and that will be the next thing that we'll update. So we can see that we are now booting from our new firmware 16.4.8.5, and it will take us back to our console prompt. We can see here after we're booting the latest firmware, we can see that it's already telling us that our FPGA and our ROMMON version is older than the recommended image. So that will be our next task. We're now going to copy via TFTP the ROMMON version and bring that up to version 1.1.18. So same again, we're going to copy the file by TFTP to the local disk, and we are then going to issue the command to upgrade the ROMMON. Now, if I issue the show module command, we can see beforehand the ASA ROMMON version is set to 1.1.1, and our software version is 916.485. So now we're going to upgrade the ROMMON from our disk. Let me go find the file name again. There it is. ASA firmware 1118. And now we're going to proceed with our upgrade procedure. What the device will do now is it will boot into the secondary ROM, the standby ROM, and it will start to do the upgrade. And then it will then reboot into that ROM that we upgraded and then upgrade the main ROM. So you'll see that the device does the update twice because this device has 2 ROMs. So it's going to upgrade both of them. It's just going to erase the ROM, program the ROM, erase the ROM, program the ROM, and it's going to do that twice until we do our full reboot. So let's jump back to when it's finished. There we go. We can see ROMMON was successfully upgraded. And if we jump back into our command line and we issue the show module command, we can see that we have version 1.1 18. So now let's now that we've got an up-to-date device, let's get it plugged in and let's start configuring. And now that we've got our firewall fully up to date, we're now ready and we have connected to it via our console cable. The first thing we're going to look at is, and you're probably all asking yourself the same question, Matt, how are you going to have two firewalls in one? Well, we are going to use something called contexts, and we are going to make a firewall run with two contexts and a system context. So we're going to assign those interfaces that we wanted to use to that context, and it's going to act as if it's like having two virtual firewalls within the one physical firewall. So we're going to start by connecting to this ASA, which is blank. It's got a default configuration on it. We've fully updated it. Nothing is assigned and configured. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put it into multi-context mode. So we're going to go config T even. Nope. I'm going to go mode multi. Now the system is going to reboot and it's going to create the system context. And then we're going to create the admin context where we define the interface that we're going to use for managing the firewall itself to be able to administer it. And then we're going to define the two separate contexts for each of those firewalls that I want to run on here. And they will have their own interfaces assigned to them and their own ASDM that we can log in and manage. So let's wait till this reboots and we get back to the command line. Right, so we can see it is creating the system context, and you can see that we have the ability to create two more contexts. The system context doesn't count towards the count. So we'll have a system/admin context, and we will have our two contexts, one for MPLS and one for global crossing. So that's what we will configure next. So we are back up. We are in the main system. We are going to change to system. There we go. So show context. We've got the admin one, which is the default. So if we do a dir, so there we go. So it's got its own config as admin.config now. So this will be the equivalent of the startup config. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change to the admin context. So admin hyphen admin hyphen context is admin, just to make sure. Yes. So I think context admin is already in place. So we should be able to just jump to it. I should be able to allocate the interface, and I want to allocate the management interface. So let's show int IP brief. So I'm going to assign the management interface because I'm going to use that to be able to reach this box directly. So I'm going to allocate the interface management 01. So that allocates it to that context. I think the config URL is already set, but we will set it anyway. Disk 0, and we said it was admin.cfg. Yes, should already be in place. So it's already there, so that's good. Okay, now we will do context CTX. Let's call MPLS. Has that changed? And we'll allocate interface G 1/1 and 1/2, an inside and an outside. And we will do the config URL will be disk 0:/ and we called that CTX MPLS. So we'll call this MPLS-CFG. Okay. And then we'll create the next context, which was context. And we were going to call this CTX-GX. And to this one, we will allocate interface 1/3 and 1/4. And the config URL will be disk 0:/ and we'll call this GX dot CFG. So that should be that for that. To the context admin. Now the interface we assigned here was the management one. So if I do a show int IP brief, you can see just the one interface. We're going to go int man 1/1. Now I'm going to do the name interface as management. I'm going to set the security level as 0. IP address is going to be DHCP and set root for the time being because I don't know what I'm going to plug in there. No shut. And I'm going to do HTTP server enable and HTTP. I'm going to allow to MGMT, and I'll allow SSH version, and I'll allow SSH to that. So that should allow us just to plumb that in and get a IP address via DHCP on the management interface. We should have, we should actually set the ASDM image. ASDM, that's what I want. Copy that, change to context admin and config to ASDM image. No, we don't do it under there. Maybe we do it under the system one. ASDM image is disk. Yeah. I set the boot image as well. Write that out. So we set the boot image, we set the ASDM image, to set our temporary admin and password. I will change these later. Privilege level 15. So that should be the context of that. Now let's change to CT context CTX-MPLS. We're going to set our host name as MPLS-FW-DE. And our Said, what are our interfaces? Show int IP brief. We've got 1 and 2. So int g1/1. Our name interface is going to be mpls-outside. Our security level is going to be 20. Our IP address is going to be, let's copy and paste that. It's going to be that. No shut. Int g1/2. That's going to be our MPLS inside. Security level is going to be 100. Our IP address is going to be, that is Oliver or Sniff the Beagle plodding up and down as he always does. Enter. No shut. Show IP. No, show int IP brief. Okay, so we've got our two interfaces and they are down, but they are administratively up. That should be enough for that. That should give us that interface. Okay, I won't do the roots yet. Let's just write that. Let's change to ctx-global crossing. Context global crossing. Okay, show int IP brief, and we have got interfaces 1/3 and 1/4. So config t, host name, we did gx-fw-de int g1/3. So this is going to be name if, and it's going to be gx-outside. It's going to be a security level of 20. It's going to have an IP address of, copy, paste. Yep. And we'll no shut that interface as well. And the next one we have is int g1/4. And it's going to be gx-inside. It's going to have a security level of 100, and it's going to have an IP address of, copy and paste this. We will no shut that as well. It's going to write that. So show run. So we've got our two inside and outside interfaces configured. Okay, so in the context for that one has got those two interfaces, those contexts got that. The admin has got that management interface. Okay. Let's set up the ASDM on the two interfaces and make sure that we can reach that. So let's double check what we have to do to get ASDM enabled on the inside interface for this context. So config T. So we don't need to do the ASDM image. So I'm sure we have to do HTTP server enable. HTTP. We're going to allow any network at the moment via the MPLS inside. Oh, I'm on the global crossing one on my GX hyphen inside. Yep. If I do a username, privilege level 15, and then if I do the authentication, HTTP console local. If I do the same for SSH, and if I do SSH to that interface as well, which was GX hyphen inside. Okay, let's do a show run. Right, so what have we got? So we've got our global crossing firewall context. It's got an outside interface on 1/3. It's got an inside interface on 1/4. We don't need to configure the ASDM image because we do that at the system level. But we've enabled HTTP and SSH on the inside interface. We'll test that. Test that with another laptop in a second. So yeah, let's test that. I will grab another laptop and I will test that I can reach the ASDM interface and the SSH interface on the inside interface for that machine. So let me go and check that. Okay, and that tested working perfectly fine. So we can reach the ASDM for this context firewall, and we can SSH into this firewall now. One thing to remember is that you need to, if we exit from here, if we log into the system of the firewall, if we do a show int IP brief, you need to make sure that you enable do a no shut of the interfaces at the system level so that they can then be used with inside the context. I'm going to configure now the other MPLS's context for access via ASDM. So let's just jump over onto that box there. I know we need to double check the SSH, and I will have to set myself another IP address. I know this video is going to be a bit complicated because it's a bit all over the place. I'm trying to think about what I need to get done as well as trying to make a video about it. So I'm sorry if this doesn't follow the usual sort of like step-by-step scenario. Okay, so we are on the MPLS context now. So we will generate a key pair, SSH version 2. We want to enable our HTTP server. We're going to enable HTTP at the moment from any network to the MPLS inside interface. We'll allow SSH as well to the inside interface. We will set up a user again. I will change this. Admin password will be Cisco. Privilege level will be 15. AAA authentication for HTTP will be console local. And we'll do the same for SSH. Okay. What else am I missing? Let's do a show run. Outside interface, inside interface. We've enabled ASDM, HTTP servers enabled. We've enabled SSH v2. Show int brief, show int IP brief. Okay, they are currently down. We'll save that. Okay, I will plug the laptop now into the inside interface for this firewall, and I will check that we can SSH into it and reach the ASDM. And as long as we can do that, we can then move on to adding the routes that were on each of these firewalls into each of the contexts. We can then tidy up the naming and the security. I can then lock it down, and we should then have technically a physical single ASA device that has two virtual ASA contexts running on the inside that we can manage independently of each other and assign physical interfaces to. So I'll be back in a minute once I've just tested that access. Perfect. So both contexts are now reachable from ASDM and from SSH for their inside interfaces. So we now have our MPLS firewall. ASDM is running. We've got logging enabled. That's all good. I'm going to do that on the other context as well. Ciphers are all now set to high for our SSH and our web access. And what we'll do as well under the management interface is we'll configure all the SSH version 2. We do have, I'm going to set a temporary IP address on the management interface, and I'm going to test reaching that via SSH and ASDM. AAA, we need to do the AAA for this one as well. Authentication for SSH will be console local, same for HTTP. Right, let's set the management IP. Let's go to the management interface. I'm going to set the IP address to a 192.168.1.1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and jump now onto the test laptop. I'm going to plug into the management interface of this device, check that I can SSH into that interface, and check that I can reach the ASDM interface. As long as that's all working, I then know I've got access to each of the 3 contexts that I need to via SSH and ASDM, and I can then change those IP addresses on site once I need to. So I'll check that that's all working, then we'll come back and we'll start putting all of these routes into each of the contexts, and then we should have 2 finished firewalls. Right, what I'm going to start doing now is I'm going to start adding all of these routes. I've added the 2 for the new MPLS inside interface. I'm now going to add all of these routes for the MPLS outside interface. So I'm going to just tidy these up on a sheet so I can copy and paste them in, and I'll be back when they're ready to go in, and then we'll do we'll check the routing table. And I have edited all of those routes, and I am now pasting them all in for the outside interface. Show route. That's the inside interfaces. Obviously, I need to bring up the outside interface. If I plug that one in, we should see all of those routes that are pointing towards the outside interface. Good, they are all in place. So we'll save that. So I'm basically going to do the exact same now for the GX context. Those are going in. So there we go. We now have on our GX context, we have our GX firewall, and we have an outside interface, an inside interface. We have our inside and outside routes. We have our authentication configured for SSH and HTTP. We're allowing management of that firewall via the internal interface. And we have a local username and password. So that is all configured and ready for Uday to start copying rules on. Actually, we will start doing that on Monday, and I'll try and record a little bit of us just going through the process of what we're going to sort and put on there. But I won't be able to show you everything that's involved in that. But we'll just show you that we're able to access the device as two individual firewalls and putting the information on. So now that we've got that one in there, let's exit the GX context. Let's change to the MPLS context. Context CTX-MPLS. Let's do a show run on here. So again, we have the MPLS firewall. It has an enable password, inside, outside interface. Logging is enabled. We have our inside routes, our outside routes, which match what are on the current firewalls. We have our AAA authentication for HTTP and SSH. We're allowing management access via the inside interfaces, the same as what was happening on the original devices. Our ciphers are all set to high. And we have a local username and password. So that is already set to go. Now let me just set the IP address of the system management interface back to DHCP. I'll plug it into my network here and we'll connect to it and we'll have a look at it in the ASDM so you can see the two contexts and understand how it's basically two firewalls. Okay, ASDM launcher installed on my Windows VM. One main of the reasons why you still need to keep 68 or 69 admin, and one of the main reasons why you still need to install Java is because of this launcher. So we've installed the launcher. We are connecting to the management interface now of the actual system ASA. So the ASA's management interface, we've connected to that. And you should see that we'll see our contexts now, which are technically the same as having two separate firewalls. So there you go. So we've logged in. Let's make this bigger. So you can see that this is the main system context, the admin. So you can see that we just have a management interface. This allows us just to see traffic coming into our management interface. We can make some underlying configuration changes for the management interface. We can manage its interface. If we wanted to set it to a static IP, we can obviously set its static route so that it can be reached over different networks, etc. We can change the device name, set the domain name, etc., stuff like that. So we're not going to be doing any firewalling under this context. We are just going to be using it just as a management context. So if we go back to home, and if I connect now to our MPLS context, and obviously don't forget, this is just one physical box down here. You can see this one we assigned two interfaces to. So it's got its two interfaces, and they are separated from the other ASA's context interfaces. I can now go into the configuration. I can manage the firewall rules for this device, the NAT rules. I can come look at the routes. So here's all the static routes for this device, etc. They can all be managed. We can do the device configuration the same as you would with any other device. So that's for that context. If I then go, oh, I want to look at the global crossing firewall, I can click on that and it will take me into the global crossing one, which again has got two interfaces, and I can manage all of the configuration for that device. Again, I can set NATs if I want to, and I can set firewall rules. So we've got our base configuration now ready to go for these two firewalls to be merged into one device and replaced. So this device will have the ability to manage two, and I've still got another 4 ports free, but so I can assign some extra interfaces to each of these contexts if I so wish. If you license a higher number of contexts, then you could obviously add an additional context, but obviously you've got to bear in mind you're balancing resources that would have been handled by one device. You're now having one device act as two firewalls at the same time. So what we've done here is we've taken two smaller Cisco 5505s and created two of those on a 5516 device, which should be more than capable of handling the traffic load of both of those devices. So I'm now going to tidy up some configuration on here off camera that is more sensitive and I don't want you guys to see. And then I will take you on a road trip to Germany when we put it in, and you'll get to see this device again once it makes its journey to the rack. So not only have we now gone through updating an ASA, ROMMON, system software, ASDM software, we have also gone off and done quite an advanced configuration to split the ASA into technically 3 contexts, but only 2 of them count towards the license because the 2 of them will be doing firewalling. The other one is just a management context. To allow us to take 2 very old Cisco ASA 5505s and bring them onto a single piece of hardware and share the resources between the 2 to manage the firewall security of an uplinks towards 2 different MPLS providers. Like I said, this device is not sitting on the internet, it's sitting behind a private LAN. All of our securities on there are configured for the highest ciphers. I've now reset all of the passwords off camera. All of the IP addressing within the scopes are private ranges, RFC 1918. I hope you enjoyed that. I know it's been a bit more of a rambling video because I've had to look at information that I need to put in there and trying to manage getting it configured how I need it to be configured and try and video it at the same time. So that's the first time I've had to try and juggle the two things that I'm trying to do simultaneously. So hopefully it made sense. If not, leave a comment below, like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one, which will be for routing if it's not me traveling to France and Germany soon. So I will see you on the next video.